Hey there, folks. Grab a seat, pour yourself a cup of coffee or tea, and settle in. Because I've got a story for you that's going to stick with you a while. It's one of those tales that'll make you laugh, maybe tear up a little, and definitely think twice about the folks you pass by every day. My name's Jack. I'm well past 60, and I've seen a lot in my time. From the days we huddled around the radio instead of YouTube, to now, when kids think the world spins on their phone screens. But this story, it's special. It's about Ella May, a janitor at a fancy college up in New England, and how she turned everything upside down one day. Curious? Well, stick with me. I promise it's worth it. I live not far from Westbrook College, one of those ritzy places where millionaires' kids go to learn how to run the world. You know the type. Ivy-covered buildings, students in preppy sweaters that cost more than my first car, and a parking lot full of BMWs and Teslas. I'd wander over there sometimes, maybe to drop my grandson off for a tour, or just to stretch my legs, because it's pretty as a picture. That's where I first met Ella May. She was a janitor, one of those folks we all see but don't really notice. In her 50s, a black woman with kind eyes and a quiet voice, she always wore this gray uniform, a little frayed at the cuffs, and carried a mop like it was her old friend. I remember walking into the main hall one day, and there she was, scrubbing the floor, humming an old gospel tune, the kind my aunt used to sing down in South Carolina when I was a kid. Her voice was low and warm, and I stopped to listen. She caught me looking, gave a shy smile, and said, "Oh, sorry, didn't think anyone could hear me." I grinned back and said, "No, keep going, it's beautiful." She just chuckled and went back to her work. Ella had been at Westbrook for nearly 20 years, I found out later when we got to chatting. She lived in a little house an hour away by bus, got up at 4 in the morning to make her shift. Her hands were rough from years of work, but she never complained. One time I asked her, "Ella, how do you do it? On your feet all day, and nobody even says thank you." She looked at me with those wise eyes and said, "Jack, the Lord gives us trials so we can show who we are. I just do my job." And you know what? I believed her. There was a strength in her, quiet, steady, like an oak tree that's been standing 100 years. But not everyone saw Ella the way I did. To the students at Westbrook, she was just the janitor. Not a person, not Ella May, just a shadow in a uniform who cleaned up their messes. And there was this one group of kids I started calling the golden children. You can picture them, rich, cocky, acting like the world was theirs to play with. The ringleader was Tyler, tall, blonde hair, swept just so, with a smile that screamed, "I'm better than you." Word was his dad owned half the real estate in Boston, and Tyler carried himself like that, gave him a free pass. Always hanging around him were Caitlin, a girl with perfect nails and a voice that could cut glass, and Zach, the quiet one, sneaky, always ready to back Tyler up. I saw how they treated Ella, and it rubbed me the wrong way. One day, I was passing the cafeteria when Tyler and his crew were at a table, tossing burger wrappers right onto the floor. Ella came over to clean it up, and Tyler said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Hey, Auntie, can you hurry it up? We've got important stuff going on." Caitlin giggled like it was the funniest thing, and Zach chimed in, "Yeah, you've got, like, one job." Ella didn't say a word, just kept sweeping, her face calm as ever. But I could see it in her eyes. She heard them, and it stung. I wanted to march over and give those kids a piece of my mind, but Ella caught my eye and shook her head, like she was saying, "It's not worth it, Jack." So I let it go, for then. After that, I started keeping an eye out for Ella whenever I was around Westbrook. She'd become a friend, in a quiet sort of way. We'd chat sometimes when she was on her break, She'd sit on a bench outside with a thermos of tea, and I'd join her if I was passing by. She told me about her life, little by little. She grew up in a small town in Georgia, back when folks like us were kids, in the days when segregation wasn't just a history lesson. Her folks were sharecroppers, and she'd worked since she was old enough to carry a bucket. She'd dreamed of college herself once, but life had other plans. A husband who passed too soon, a daughter she raised alone. That daughter, she said, was her pride and joy, off working as a nurse now. Ella's eyes lit up when she talked about her, and I could tell she'd poured everything into giving her a better shot. But at Westbrook, respect was hard to come by. The students, especially Tyler's crew, saw her as a punching bag. One cold February day, I was dropping off some old books for the library donation bin, and I saw them at it again. Ella was mopping the hallway near the lecture halls, and Tyler was leaning against the wall with Caitlin and Zach, all three of them smirking. There was a soda can on the floor, one of those fancy energy drinks the kids love, spilling sticky mess everywhere. Ella se inclinó para recogerlo, y Tyler lo empujó justo fuera de su alcance. "Oops," he said, grinning. "Guess you'll have to chase it, huh?" Caitlin laughed so hard she snorted, and Zach added, "Yeah, good exercise for you." My blood boiled. I'm not a young man anymore, but I've still got a temper when I see something wrong. I started walking over, ready to tell them off, but Ella straightened up, looked at me, and gave that same little head shake. "Don't, Jack." She picked up the can, wiped the floor, and kept going, humming her gospel tune like nothing happened. Later, when we were outside, I asked, "Ella, why do you let them treat you like that?" She sipped her tea and said, "Jack, I've seen worse than a few spoiled kids. They don't know what they're doing. Not yet. Life'll teach 'em." I didn't get it then, but I trusted her. She had a way of making you believe she knew something you didn't. It wasn't just Tyler's gang, though. The whole college had this air about it, like Ella and the other staff were invisible. Professors walked past her without a nod. Students left trash cans overflowing like it was her job to fix their laziness. But Tyler's crew took it to another level. One time, I was in the student union picking up a coffee. They've got a little cafe there, and I overheard them plotting something. Caitlin was saying, "We should totally mess with her tomorrow. It's too easy." Tyler smirked and said, "Yeah, I've got an idea. Meet me at the quad after class." Zach just nodded, like always. I didn't like the sound of it, but I didn't know what they were up to. Not yet. The next day, I was back at Westbrook. My grandson had a tour, and I was his ride. It was spring now, the trees blooming, and I was waiting by the quad when I saw it go down. Ella was sweeping the walkway, minding her own business, when Tyler strolled up with a bucket of water. Caitlin and Zach were behind him, giggling like they were in on the best joke ever. Before I could blink, Tyler dumped the whole bucket right over Ella's head. She gasped, soaked to the bone, and the three of them burst out laughing. "Spring cleaning!" Tyler shouted, and Caitlin doubled over, saying, "Oh my God, she looks like a drowned rat." A few other students nearby snickered, but most just kept walking, heads down. I was halfway across the quad before I knew it, fists clenched, ready to give Tyler a piece of my mind. Or maybe more, if I'm honest. But Ella stopped me again. She wiped the water from her face, looked at me with those steady eyes, and said, "Jack, I'm fine. Let it go." Her uniform was dripping, her hair plastered to her head, but she stood there like a rock. Tyler and his pals wandered off, still laughing, and I just stood there, fuming. "Ella," I said, "you can't let them get away with that." "That's too far." She smiled, a small, tired smile, and said, "They think they're winning." But they're not. You'll see. I didn't know what she meant, but I couldn't shake the feeling she was up to something. Over the next few months, it kept going. Little jabs, mean pranks. They'd leave fake notes on her cart saying things like, "Learn to read, janitor," or spill coffee on purpose just to watch her clean it. I'd see her sometimes, head down, working through it, and I'd ask, "Ella, why don't you report them?" She'd just say, "Jack, I've got my own way of handling this." Patience is a virtue, right? She'd wink, and I'd shake my head, wondering what she was cooking up in that quiet mind of hers. Then I started hearing whispers around campus. Ella wasn't just sweeping floors. She'd been seen in the library late at night, flipping through books. One of the security guards, an old buddy of mine named Pete, told me, "Jack, you know Ella's been taking night classes? She's got a student ID and everything." I was floored. "Ella? Our Ella?" Pete nodded. "Yep. Been at it for years, slow and steady. Keeps it real quiet." I couldn't believe it. All this time, while those kids were mocking her, Ella May was doing something they'd never expect. And graduation day was coming up fast, the day I'd finally see what she meant by, "You'll see." It was late May, and Westbrook was buzzing. The campus looked like something out of a postcard. Green lawns, white tents, families in their Sunday best snapping photos. I was there because my grandson was tagging along with a friend who was graduating, and I figured I'd stick around for the show. The air smelled like fresh-cut grass and promise, and everywhere you looked, there were kids in black caps and gowns, grinning like they'd just conquered the world. I spotted Ella early that morning, still in her gray uniform, sweeping the steps of the main hall. She waved at me, same old smile, and I called out, "Big day, huh, Ella?" She nodded and said, "Bigger than you think, Jack. Stick around." There was a twinkle in her eye, and I got that feeling again. She was up to something. The ceremony was set for noon, in the big outdoor amphitheater. I found a seat near the back, fanning myself with the program. It was a warm one. The place was packed with proud parents, professors in their fancy robes, and students whispering about their summer plans. Tyler, Caitlin, and Zach were up front with the graduates, looking smug as ever. Tyler had his cap tilted just so, like he was posing for a magazine, and Caitlin kept fixing her hair, probably for the Instagram shots she'd post later. Zach was slouched next to them, scrolling his phone. I couldn't help but wonder what they'd think if they knew Ella was watching from the sidelines, still in her uniform, leaning on her broom. The speeches started, the usual stuff about "the future is yours" and "chase your dreams." I'll admit, I zoned out a bit, thinking about Ella and those night classes Pete had mentioned. How long had she been at it? Years, he'd said, slow and steady. I was still chewing on that when the dean, a tall guy with a voice like a foghorn, took the stage to hand out diplomas. The crowd clapped as names were called, one by one, kids crossing the stage to grab their scrolls and shake hands. Tyler went up, flashing that million-dollar grin, and Caitlin strutted like she was on a runway. Zach shuffled across, barely looking up. I clapped politely, but my mind was elsewhere. Then came the special awards, the part where they honor the top students. The dean cleared his throat and said, "This year, we have a unique recipient for the President's Award for Academic Excellence. This individual has shown extraordinary dedication, overcoming obstacles most of us can't imagine, all while maintaining a perfect 4.0 GPA. Please join me in congratulating Ella May Johnson." The crowd went dead silent. I swear, you could have heard a pin drop. My jaw hit the floor, and I looked over at Ella. She wasn't by her broom anymore. She was walking up from the side, not in her uniform, but in a cap and gown, black and crisp, her head held high. The sun caught her face, and she was beaming. Not smug, not proud in a showy way, but with this quiet, unshakable joy. I started clapping before I even knew it, and slowly the crowd joined in, a ripple turning into a roar. But up front, Tyler, Caitlin, and Zach, they looked like they'd been hit by a truck. Ella crossed the stage, shook the dean's hand, and took her award, a shiny plaque that glinted in the light. The dean kept talking, his voice booming. Ella May has worked as a custodian here at Westbrook for nearly 2 decades. What many of you don't know is that for the last 10 years, she's also been a student, taking night classes, earning her degree in education one course at a time. She graduates today with honors, and next fall, she'll be joining our faculty as an adjunct professor. The applause exploded again, and I was on my feet, hollering like a kid at a ball game. Ella glanced my way and winked. That same wink she'd given me when she'd said, "Patience is a virtue." I looked at Tyler and his crew. Their faces were a mix of shock and something else. Embarrassment, maybe, or shame. Caitlin's mouth was open. Zach was staring at his shoes, and Tyler's grin was gone, replaced by a tight-lipped frown. They didn't clap, not at first, but as the crowd kept going, they gave these weak little hand taps, like they didn't know what else to do. I couldn't help but smirk. All those years of mocking her, thinking she was beneath them, and here she was, standing taller than they'd ever be. After the ceremony, I found Ella near the refreshment tent, still in her gown, holding that plaque like it was a treasure. Folks were swarming her, professors, parents, even some students, shaking her hand, saying things like, "You're an inspiration," and "I had no idea." I waited my turn, and when I got to her, I said, "Ella, you sneaky devil, why didn't you tell me?" She laughed, a big, full laugh I hadn't heard before, and said, "Jack, I wanted to surprise you. Besides, I wasn't sure I'd make it till the end." I hugged her, plaque and all, and said, "You didn't just make it. You showed 'em all." We talked for a while, sipping punch and watching the crowd thin out. She told me how it started. A night class here and there, paid for with her savings and a small scholarship she'd scraped together. She'd study after her shifts, sometimes till midnight, then catch that early bus back the next day. It was hard, she admitted, but I kept thinking about my daughter. I wanted her to see me finish something big. I asked about the kids, Tyler and the rest. Her face softened, and she said, "They're young, Jack. They've got time to learn. I hope today was a start." And speaking of those kids, I saw them later, huddled by the parking lot. Tyler was quieter than I'd ever seen him, kicking at the gravel like it had personally offended him. Caitlin was muttering something about, "How did she even?" her voice trailing off. And Zach just shrugged, hands stuffed in his pockets. I walked past, close enough to hear Tyler mumble, "Guess she's not so dumb after all." It wasn't much, but it was something. A crack in that armor of theirs. I didn't stop to gloat. Ella wouldn't have wanted that. But I couldn't help thinking, "Yeah, kid, you've got a lot to learn." Days turned to weeks, and word about Ella spread like wildfire. Local papers picked up the story. Janitor turned Professor Stunn's college, and she even got a call from some TV station wanting an interview. She turned it down, said she didn't need the fuss. "Jack," she told me one day over tea, "I didn't do this for the spotlight. I did it for me. And for my girl." By fall, she was teaching. Intro to Education, Tuesdays and Thursdays. I dropped by her classroom once just to peek. There she was, in a blazer instead of a uniform, writing on the board, students leaning in to listen. She caught me at the door and waved me off with a grin, like she was saying, "Get out of here, Jack." I left, chuckling to myself, proud as could be. Time passed, and Ella settled into her new role like she'd been born for it. Pete, my security guard buddy, told me students loved her. They'd line up after class to ask questions, drawn to her quiet wisdom. I'd see her sometimes on campus, still humble as ever, but with a new lightness in her step. One day, I asked her, "Ella, was it worth it? All those years? All that work?" She smiled, that same steady smile, and said, "Jack, every minute. Not just for the degree, but for what it taught me about myself." I nodded, knowing she'd given me a lesson too. As for Tyler, Caitlin, and Zach, I heard bits and pieces over time. Tyler graduated and went off to some big-shot job in Boston, but Pete said he'd been quieter his last semester, less cocky. Caitlin transferred schools, couldn't handle the whispers, I guess. Zach stuck around, and I saw him once in the library, actually studying for a change. Did Ella's triumph change them? Maybe a little. Maybe enough to make them think twice before they judged someone again. I like to think so. Looking back, I think about what Ella taught me, and maybe what she can teach us all. We've lived long enough, you and me, to know life's not always fair. We've seen folks judged for how they look, what they do, where they come from. But Ella? She didn't let that stop her. She took the long road, the hard road, and came out shining. Those kids who mocked her got a lesson they won't forget. And I got a friend who showed me what grit and grace look like up close. So, next time you're out there, look around. Really look. You never know who's got a surprise up their sleeve. And if you see Ella, tell her Jack says hi. She'll like that.